You're chit-chatting with a hag who keeps licking her lips and making comments about how tasty you look, while also promising not to eat you. But you have to wonder, can she lie? A reader of modern urban fantasies likely has to wonder as well, were fairies really incapable of lying in folklore? In Summer Night, by Jim Butcher, the Queen of the Winter Court says, "You should know, Mr. Dresden, that my kind, from great to small, are bound to speak the truth." Strangely, fairies could not lie in mythology either. Catherine Briggs, the folklorist, says of trooping fairies, "They never took an oath, for they detested nothing so much as lies." Fairies then would rarely promise anything or give an absolute answer so as to avoid lying. Wince's book states that they have a respect for honesty. This is a common aspect of fairy behavior. In the Scandinavian story, someone accuses a huldrefolk of lying and is scolded by their fellow people, for everyone knows that their honor is too great to willingly lie. Further, in fairy tale after fairy tale, fairies tell the truth, even when it would be so easy to get what they want by lying. There is, however, little evidence that fairies can't lie. Rather, it seems fairies were obsessed with a sort of honor system and morality, and so wouldn't lie. Sir, sometimes they scared people to death or led them into bogs to sink into the swamp, but that was just hilarious hijinks. I did decide to put this idea to the test, however, and read through hundreds of folktales and stories of people's encounters with fairies at random. In all that time, I only found a few incidents of sort of lying, and one straight-up lie. Maybe. The first comes from a woman recounting her grandfather's encounter with a fairy. Her grandfather captured the fairy and said he wouldn't let the fairy go until it promised him its treasure. "Stop, stop," the fairy said. "Stop till I get it for you." The woman then said that her grandfather, like a fool, opened his hand, allowing the little creature to escape. Perhaps the fairy in this story did lie, or maybe not. What if it had no treasure to give, other than the shoe it left behind? In any case, that is the closest to a direct lie I found a fairy give. The second sort of case comes from Germany, in which people heard someone calling for help. As they ran to help, getting exhausted, they discovered that the person wasn't a person, but a fairy using an illusion to make it appear someone was drowning. Though again, the fairy didn't necessarily lie directly. They never said they were drowning, they just called for help. This leads to an important point. Fairies rarely need to lie, because they can simply make illusions, so you believe what they want you to. The castle you were in is really a lake. The food you were eating was garbage, and what you thought was a human was really a monster. Thus people might find themselves walking in a circle within sight of the village, while thinking they were lost in the forest. There is no reason for you to question your eyes, smell, hearing, or taste. So most people just never questioned it. Enter the changeling, a fairy pretending to be human, after the fairies had kidnapped the human and brought them to fairyland. People would torture those they thought were changeling in hopes that they would bring back their loved ones. And in the case of one human woman, Bridget, her husband, father, and friends tortured her to death in hopes of rescuing her from the fairy they thought had kidnapped her. People clearly thought that changelings could lie, or at least act human to the point that they didn't believe them when they said they were human to their loved ones. There is one exception to the idea that fairies didn't lie because they were too honorable. That comes from some folk tales on the island of Rügen, in Germany. It is explained that the underground people here can't lie, or they will turn into toads, dung beetles, and other nasty creatures for 1,000 years. So in this case, the fairies can lie, but fear being punished for it, although it isn't certain who is doing the punishing. Of course, I can see a fairy king or queen ordering one of their subjects to lie, while promising them the most delicious dung while they wait out their lives as a dung beetle. I don't know of any fairy tale where this has happened, but one can imagine it. There are, of course, thousands of fairy tales, so perhaps I have missed one. If you know of something I missed, please share. Regardless of what happens in the comments, however, fairies, at the very least, only rarely lie.